The Carolina Hurricanes on Sunday signed not only one, but two defensemen to bring more lifelines to the blue line.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I am your host, Zach Martin. I am the Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers, also doing a new column for the Chicago Wolves called Wolves Weekly. You should check that out as well. I am the co-host of the Searchcast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun show for you guys on a new week for a Monday part of the show, as we get to talk about the two new contracts of Joakim Ryan and Dominik Badinka, who the Hurricanes signed on Sunday afternoon. And we also get to look at a way too early 2024-25 roster that I kind of wrote over the weekend at the Hockey Writers, seeing what would happen if certain RFAs come back to the Hurricanes, maybe kind of fill out the rest of the roster for next year. But before we get into all of that today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So, like I said, the Carolina Hurricanes signed two players over the weekend, mainly on Sunday. One of them is Joakim Ryan, who the Hurricanes did have with them in the system back during the 2020-21 season, where he did play 4 games for the Chicago Wolves. In those 4 games, he did get 2 points. And then with the Carolina Hurricanes, he played in 4 games, but did get no points as well. And then over the last 3 seasons, he actually played with the Malmo Redhawks over in the Swedish Hockey League, or the SHL, where he got 31 points back in 21-22, and then 15 the season 22-23. And this past season, he had 18 points. And the Carolina Hurricanes did sign him to a 1-year, 2-way deal, where if he plays in the NHL with the Hurricanes, he's going to make $775,000. And with him playing with the Chicago Wolves, he'll be making $110,000. When asked about bringing him back to the system, Hurricane General Manager Eric Tolke said, "We are glad to have Joakim back in Carolina after his time here in 2020-2021. His veteran leadership and experience at the highest levels will be a great asset to our organization." And yeah, it's a good thing, kind of having someone back to bolster another part of the blue line, where you look at it now, you're kind of looking at a blue line that's probably going to feature like Scott Morrow, Himasami, Anthony Honka. Now you got Joakim Ryan back. You got Riley Stillman that they also signed as well. So you're looking at a blue line in the Chicago Wolves that's going to be very, very good and very strong. So another good veteran body to have to help the young guys move along, and just being able to bring another, piece of what he's done overall in his career. Like I said, he played the last 3 years in the SHL, but you also look at the 2. He also played a couple seasons with the San Jose Sharks from 27-18 through 18-19, and then played 35 games with the Kings back in 19-20. And even had spent some time in the AHL with the San Jose Barracudas from 15-16 to 17-18. So he does have a lot of experience in the AHL for the early part of his career. Did play, only 4 games back in 2021, and during that time as well. But like I said, guy who's got some experience, someone who really can help bring another veteran presence to the blue line and help the Chicago Wolves. And like I said, just looking at the overall aspect of what the team is looking at with just the guys you kind of have in your system now for the defense and what he can bring to the table overall as well. Because you look at, like I said, your blue line's got, Dominic Fenzor, Joel Nystrom, Scott Morrow, Charles Alexis Legault, Dominik Badinka, who just got signed, he will be going back to Sweden, but we'll talk about that later on. But you also got like Anthony Honka, Ronan Seeley, Alexi Himasami, Riley Stillman. So that's what I'm saying. You have a lot of guys right now that you already have on your blue line, and you add another body like that. Can't go wrong with having extra bodies, and also to another guy that if something happens with the big club in Carolina, another guy that you can kind of bring up. He's got, like I said, got the experience in the NHL level. Did play a lot with the Hurricanes his first stint around, but did have some time, with other teams within the NHL's overall. So I would say overall it's a good signing. It's a good deal. Nothing too crazy. The term isn't too bad. It's only one season, less than $800,000. You're looking at possibly your 8th, maybe 9th defenseman, depending on how you look at him on the depth chart. Maybe we'll probably play most of the season in Chicago. Who really knows? But it's good to have that extra body just in case for depth purposes for the NHL side of things, but also someone that Cam Abbott, who coached in the SHL for the last 8 seasons, bringing another SHL guy over, could use him for his veteran leadership and kind of help the guys that are in Chicago now with the fact that, you got the real affiliation with the Chicago Wolves. You're going to have a lot of you're going to have all the prospects back together. You need to fill some roster spots because as of right now, I think the Hurricanes already have 45 players under contract, I believe. So you're not looking at a whole, out of the, you're looking at 44 contracts out of 50 right now. So it's one of those things where you're kind of adding more to your overall contract numbers, bringing someone in who can help the young guys along and just be able to help out, Cam Abbott and his, how to try to find out that transition that works with the SHL and how the, trying to get that style of what he did over there, bring it to North America and see what helps with the Chicago Wolves. Overall, I like the deal. It like I said, the contract's not too long. You adding some veteran presence, someone that can, like I said, it's bolstering the blue line, bringing some depth for the Hurricanes. If something happens up there, but you got someone that could play top 4 minutes, play in the top 6. Yeah, you're most likely going to lean a lot of your younger guys, but it's also good to have some of the older guys as well. So let's say Ty Smith moves up and is the 7th D-man for the Hurricanes. You're looking at guys like I said, Joakim Ryan. You're going to be looking at Riley Stillman, who you're going to be your 2 main guys that are going to be kind of leading the way. Stillman's 26, Ryan's 31. Every other defenseman they got there right now, like Fenzora's 22, Nystrom's 22, Scott Morrow's 21, Legaut's 20, Anthony Honka's 23, Ronan Seeley and Himo Salmi are both 21. So you're looking at guys like Ryan and Stillman who are going to be your veteran D-men on the blue line with a bunch of other guys that are probably 23 or less. So it makes sense to why, if you're looking at it in a transition year for the Chicago Wolves, where they haven't made the playoffs the last couple of years, you're reaffiliated again, so you're bringing pretty much all the prospects back together. Some guys did play with the Wolves last year, Ronan Seeley and all that. Other guys played either in Europe or played around the AHL, so now you're bringing all of them back together, and it makes sense overall you're bringing everyone back together. It makes sense just to have those veteran leadership, especially on the defensive side of things where everyone else is young. It's not a bad thing if you do go all guys that are under 23 for your defense, but if you're looking at a season like this where it's, you're playing the Coachella Valley Firebirds multiple times, they just back-to-back Western Conference champs. You're looking at the back-to-back Calder Cup champs and the Hershey Bears. You need to play them a few times as well. A lot of early measuring stick games. You have a lot of games you're playing 3 games in 3 days. Sometimes you're playing 3 different teams in 3 days and stuff like that. So you're looking at a life in the AHL where maybe some guys aren't used to that yet, especially if you're coming from Europe, or the fact that you're looking at a roster with a whole bunch of new guys that are coming together. So it really just depends on how you want to look at it. And I think overall, getting guys like Ryan, who's been there and done that before, will definitely go a long way. And also to just, adding the other leadership of Riley Stillman there too, because he's been there and done that with the Amherst. Now Ryan's coming back and doing it again with the Chicago Wolves this time. So it's very, very exciting. I'm glad that, the fact that you're bringing a former Cane, former Wolf back, even though it's a very limited number of games from 2020, 2021. But it's another guy who's proven it and has a track record of doing it in the past, and has got that veteran leadership presence that the Wolves kind of need right now with, a rookie head coach in the American Hockey League, his first time coaching in North America. You're bringing guys who've, he's seen in the SHL and stuff like that too. So it's kind of a good thing, see how that works out. But like I said, overall, great deal, great veteran, like I said, great leadership presence. I'm really excited to see what Abbott and the Wolves do with, Joakim Ryan, and see what Ryan can bring to the table for the Chicago Wolves for the 2024-25 season. Now, talking about Ryan coming from the SHL, like I said, he did play for the Malmo Redhawks the last couple of years, the last 3 seasons. Now, the next guy we have to talk about was his teammate last year, and it's Dominik Badinka, and I'm really excited to talk about him. And we'll get to him and his contract that he just signed with the Carolina Hurricanes in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging, so you can connect with the candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. The one thing I like about Indeed is the fact that it makes hiring it all in one place so much easier, especially if you're looking for candidates to help your job really fast and stuff like that. It helps them match them just in a way that's so much easier for you instead of looking at other websites. And with that, they are leveraging over $140 million qualifications and preferences every day over at Indeed. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said at the end of segment 1, we were going to talk about Dominik Badinka now, as he was the 34th overall pick by the Carolina Hurricanes in the 2024 NHL entry draft that happened a couple weeks ago, and that was the draft where the Hurricanes gave up their 27th, got the 34th, and got some other picks as well from the Chicago Blackhawks, and they got the Czech defenseman, and he played with the Malmo Redhawks last season, where the 18-year-old had with the Malmo juniors, the junior team, he played in 17 games, had 2 goals and 13 points. But then when he played with the big club last year as well, he played in 33 games, got 1 goal and 4 points. Now, his deal is that 3-year entry-level contract, which if he does play in the NHL, if he did, it'd be $775,000. And in the American Hockey League, it'd be $85,000 all 3 seasons. And he does have part of his deal where there's a signing bonus that comes to $282,150. Now, with that ELC contract, it does have the return obligation clause in it, which does mean he will be going back to Malmo to play in the SHL this upcoming season. So he will still have his full ELC because he's not going to burn it playing in North America. So it's kind of just like it's going to be an ELC push, essentially. That's where you see some guys who have entry-level contracts, but while it says 3 years, you can see that it goes like for 5 years, and that's because there's a lot of push years behind that. So you can see some guys that will have 5-year deals when it's really only 3, just because you're talking about ELC pushes. So it could be a 1-year push where his he'll get the money for 4 years, but the contract's only 3 just because of a push. So that's kind of what you're looking at right now with Badinka, is the fact that, yes, it is a 3-year ELC, but since he's not burning any of his years because he's going to start back over in the SHL met with the Malmo Redhawks that he played with last season. It'll just be pushed an extra season down the road. But he is officially signed to a professional contract with the Carolina Hurricanes. Honestly, not a bad deal overall. Once he does come over to North America, you're probably looking at him going to most than likely the Chicago Wolves, probably for the 25-26 season, depending on how this training camp goes and the preseason and all that. It depends if they are going to do that. Most likely, like I say, he'll probably go back to the SHL before that. But overall, we're going to see how he does in the SHL this year. Maybe next year, you're going to be looking at him, probably going to be in Chicago. Maybe he might make a push for the NHL. Who really knows? But I could definitely see Badinka, when all things considered, you're going to probably see him with the Chicago Wolves, probably for the 25-26 season. But honestly, not bad, though, for a guy that the Hurricanes really sought after in the draft a couple weeks ago. And when asking about, Dominik and all that, Hurricanes assistant general manager Jerry New York said, Dominik is a puck-moving defenseman with good length and mobility. He played very well as an 18-year-old against tough competition in Sweden last season, and we're excited for him to make the next steps in his development. Now, I know when it comes to Badinka and stuff like that, he is a really good 200-foot, two-way defenseman, can play really well. The main thing of what they're going to look for, though, is the fact that is seeing more of a push in his offensive game. Yes, he does play a 200-foot game, really high hockey IQ, got a great stride. And it's one of those things where his offense can be pushed a little bit more, can contribute a lot more and stuff like that. He's very defensively minded. Offense can really work as well. Stick handling could work too. Like, his stick handling is good, but I think, give him more time, I think his stick handling will get better. But a lot of things that they really like about him is the fact that, with his fluid stride, his mobility is really good. Really good. He's really smooth skating. He's able to keep up with playing transitions really well. So if you're going from defense to offense, he can really move with the play really well. And someone that can really keep stride for stride. Defensively, really solid, smooth shutting down. Knows how to advance the plays as well in terms of advancing on the defense, moving it to the offense and stuff like that, kicking it into transitions. So defensively, he's really sound. He's really good. Like I said, the strides really well. He can stick with transitions really good too. And the fact that he's mature. This is an 18-year-old kid who plays like a mature 23-year-old, especially you're talking about tough competition in the SHL at 18. You kind of grow up fast in the Swedish league, and that's kind of what you see from him. So for being 18, plays like a mature, 23-year-old. Hockey IQ's out the wazoo, really, really good fluid motion. Knows how to play defense really well. Knows how to get the transitions, how to kick it out into transitions and stick with it. It's just the main thing you got to worry with him is stick handling does need to get a little bit better, and his offensive game needs to grow. So, you see, you're looking at a two-way defenseman who kind of leans for it more defensively, but has that touch of where he could, over time, I think, get his offensive game going as well. So, honestly, a really good signing for the Carolina Hurricanes. Of course, like you said, you guys your first draft pick locked up on an ELC. Going back to Malmo, he's probably going to play the whole season with the Red Hawks, and you just kind of keep up with what he's doing in the SHL. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I think this kid's going to be really, really good. Like I said, he's going to be over there all season. And then if I want to predict if we're looking down the road of where he's at for 25-26, I would not be surprised if he's with Cam Abbott in the Chicago Wolves next season in the AHL for 25-26. But overall, I think it's going to be fun to keep up with him in the SHL, see what we can do with the Red Hawks, and just kind of continue on his development. The Hurricanes think really highly of him, and for the fact that he got him locked into an ELC already, it shows that they have a lot of promise in this kid and a lot of faith in him to grow in his development. So, like I said, you're probably looking at one more season in Europe before he comes to North America next year, and more than likely plays with Abbott and the Wolves. But like I said, I really like this kid. Really good transition game, really good flow and motions, high hockey IQ. Just kind of have to work on the things that, that with the stick handling and getting the offense going. I think, once those kind of click in for him, you're looking at a very solid two-way, 200-foot game defenseman that really will play into the system that Rod Brind'amour has. So, like I said, I'm really excited to see what Dominik Badinka can do over at Malmo once again for a second season, hopefully a full season as well, and just see what his development looks like and all that. So Now we're going to talk about the way too early 2024-25 roster for your Carolina Hurricanes. There are 3 RFAs that still haven't been signed yet. And there's a lot that goes into that and seeing like what a potential roster could look like if all 3 of those guys do get signed to the Carolina Hurricanes. But we'll get to that and so much more in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to a segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said at the end of segment 2, we're going to talk about a way too early 2024-25 roster for the Carolina Hurricanes and the fact that we're still, as of right now, which is July 15th, there are some guys that are still not really signed yet to the Carolina Hurricanes, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the Hurricanes do in terms of filling up the rest of the roster spots. And for me, it's like, I wrote an article over the Hockey Writers over the weekend. If you haven't checked it out, I'll leave a link to this in the descriptions for YouTube. On the podcast side of things, if you want to go check it out. And I did post it on social media too. If you do click my link tree, which I'll talk about later, that's where you can find it as well. So for me, I used AFP Analytics, roster, contract projections. They've done a really good job. If you haven't, go check those guys out. AFP Analytics does a great job in terms of possible short-term contracts. Talking about your bridge deals, maybe talking about your long deals as well. You've heard me reference these guys a lot over the last few weeks in terms of like going into free agency, re-sign phase, all that stuff. So I use that, and then I use Puckpedia as Puck GM. Trying if you're the GM of the Hurricanes or whatever team, you can do trades, signing contracts, of your current guys or future guys and stuff like that. So kind of using those tools, trying to figure out, what kind of deals could work out for the Carolina Hurricanes. So as of right now, the Hurricanes, according to Puckpedia, they are left at right now, even with the other signings that have been going on, they do have $11.681 million left in their current cap space. And right now they're projected at 76.3%. But right now the limit is at $88 million. So right now the RFAs are still haven't signed with the Hurricanes yet, or Jack Drury, Seth Jarvis, and Martin Necas. Now I know no one really knows what it could look like for Martin Necas or Jack Drury in terms of arbitration. Of course, those guys probably want a lot more money. I can see them getting some raises. We don't know what their numbers are looking like, and I'm curious to see what the Hurricanes' numbers are looking like. But I know with Jack Drury, he made under $1 million last year for the Hurricanes. He's probably going to win a little bit more. AFP Analytics is saying $2.22 million for a 2-year deal. That's for the short term. I would take that for Jack. You give him 2 years, a nice little prove-it deal for him. It's only taking a little bit of your cap space. It's $2.22 million for 2 years. Not really bad overall. You bring him back. There's your fourth line center that you had last year. You get out of him, and you kind of have him locked up for the next couple of years. Seth Jarvis, there's so many numbers we've seen. We've seen people wanting to go for 8x8, 3x6 point something. Who really knows what it is? I even said like maybe you go somewhere in the middle. You give him a 5-year deal at 5.5, and you put him till he's 27. He was a year older than what Sebastian Aho got his deal at 26. The 5-year deal will put him at 27, and then you lock him up for the rest of his career as a Carolina Hurricane. But you give the nice little middle ground of like, okay, the Hurricanes need some flexibility. Maybe it's not time to give him the 8-year deal yet, and you don't really want to give him the bridge. Give him a 5-year deal. It's not a bad deal at all, and you give it to him at 5.5. I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, that's the AAV is too low." Give him the 8 years and lock him up now long term. They could do that. I'm just looking at like what would be if something that works out, so where you can bring all 3 of these guys back of your RFAs with all other guys you have under contract, and you give him that middle of the road. Here's your 5-year deal, and we'll take you until you're 27. Which would be around your Sebastian Aho age of another 8-year contract or something like that. And then with Martin Necas, he made $3 million the last couple of years. He could be looking at $6 million that he wants. The Hurricanes are probably going to say, no, we're not going to give you 6. I can see the arbitrator giving him $3.5 to $4 million. I'd say 4 at the max. But in terms of these purposes, I said 3.5. It's a little bit of a pay raise off the 3. He did have a down year this year, so I could see where a $3.5 to $4 million contract would work out for Martin Necas. Now, that being said, when it all comes out to what the cap would remain at for the Hurricanes, with Seth Jarvis at 5 by 5.5, Martin Necas is 3 by 3.5, and then Jack Drury's 2 by 2.22. Now you're looking at where it's $1.555 million. I know it's a lot of numbers and a lot of fives, but let's say for the sake of argument, you're going to look at a cap space of $1.55 million left for the Hurricanes. With those 3 deals done for your RFAs of Drury, Necas, and Jarvis. Now, what would the roster look like? I know a lot of people are trying to throw out, okay, what if we throw a certain guy here? What if we play a certain guy at 2C here? Who's going to play on the wing? And I know some people might not be okay with this roster, but the thing is, in terms of what you're looking at, of certain guys can only play certain positions. I think some guys can be more flexible playing on their offside that maybe they're not used to playing a whole lot. So right now, in terms of what I projected in my article, if you haven't read it yet, I would still say go give it a read and just see the full breakdown of why I thought this lineup would work this way and why I think those kind of terms of contracts could possibly work for the Hurricanes. So you're looking at Andrei Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, your first line. Pretty self-explanatory. Aho and Jarvis played a lot together last year in the first line. It clicked really well, even with Jay Gensel. You've got Andrei Svechnikov back on the first line. He does play a lot of left wing. It makes sense to have him over there in terms of you're keeping Seth Jarvis on the right wing, and he's your top line right wing player. Now, left wing, it was kind of a who do you really put over there? Because Martin Necas doesn't play left wing. You really can't put Seth Jarvis on the left. Seth Jarvis is considered center winger, but he's played a lot of right. You couldn't really play him on the left side. So I put Jack Roslovic. He's played a lot of center right wing, but he does have the ability to play left wing as well if really needed to. So if you're looking for someone to play their offside, I definitely see Jack Roslovic being that guy who could play on the left wing side. And I know he's not your prototypical second line left winger, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, I don't know about that. Looking at the rest of their bottom 6, I think Jack Roslovic's probably your best bet in terms of who your second line left winger is going to be. It's not the most ideal, but it's the one I think is going to work the best in terms of someone you're going to play on your offside and who could play top 6 minutes. Then you got Evgeny Kuznetsov, who did play some second line center last year for the Hurricanes for the regular season going into the playoffs. And then you got Martin Necas back on your right wing second line, which he played a lot of last year and the season before. So it just makes sense that, if you got Seth Jarvis back as your first line right winger, Martin Necas is your second line right behind him. Then your third line, just like, death, taxes, and who's your third line? Jordan Martinook, Jordan Stahl, Jesper Fast. Roll it back, bring it back as always. It's the same 3 guys. It's a no-brainer that makes it work out like that. Now, your fourth line, you got William Carrier on your left. You just signed him for 6 years at $2 million. He's your prototypical fourth line guy. It just makes sense to put him there. And then, like I said, you bring Jack Drury back. There's your fourth line center. He did it last year. He played really well. Did go and play the second line up in the playoffs for the Hurricanes. Not a bad option if you bring him back, and there's your fourth line center making $2.22 million. You know what you get out of him. He's really showcased his skills over the last couple of years. He did have a bump in his stats. So you bring him back. You put him with a guy like William Carrier, who's really good in terms of analytics. You have them together. I think it can really work out. And then your right winger is Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Now, Jesperi played a lot of left wing fourth line in the playoffs for the Hurricanes, kind of bounced around on that side. If William Carrier is your left winger for the fourth line, you kind of have Jesperi is kind of like the odd man out. Like, you got to put him on the fourth line. You can't put him as second line center. It hasn't really worked out for him there. You really can't put him as fourth line center because you got Jack there. You just brought in William Carrier, so it just makes sense to put KK as your fourth line right winger. Might be out of place, but that's the only really slot you can have left. Do you really trust him on the second line as your left winger? I'm not really sure. In terms of how it is, I know a lot of people talk about buyouts and trades. If KK is back, fourth line right winger. That's the best I think you're going to be really looking at right now in terms of him. Defense, pretty simple. Jacob Slavin and Brent Burns. Shane Gostisbehere, Sean Walker. I know some people are kind of maybe moving Brent Burns down, moving Sean Walker up. Maybe do you put, Chatfield and Ghost back together? What do you do? Orlov Walker, Do you move Walker up to the top line with Slavin? Who really knows? But in terms of just the easier what it would look like, I think this is what you're looking at for your defense. Slavin, Burns, Ghost, Walker, Orlov, Chatfield. Goaltenders, Pio Kachuk, Frederick Anderson, done deal. There you go. You run it back with those two guys. Now your extras, this is the most interesting part of like who do you keep up? Because like I said, you got Eric Robinson, Tyson Jost, you got Ty Smith, Brendan Lemieux signed an extension. I think he's going to be your quintessential 13th forward, somebody you can throw on the wing and be the guy to bring some extra grit if you need it, or a guy needs a night off or not going when someone's injured. So it's one of those things where Brendan Lemieux is kind of like a no-brainer. Now, your other scratches, I think you bring in Ty Smith. You extended him as well because you got him in the deal for Jake Gensel. I think he's the perfect guy to have as your 7th defenseman. He's got some experience in the NHL. I think he can gel really well with the Hurricanes and what Rod Brind'amour wants. You traded Dylan Coghlan. All signs are pointing that Tony DeAngelo is probably not going to be back for the Hurricanes. If he is, then maybe so. But right now, it doesn't look like that he's not coming back. So I think if you're picking a 7th defenseman that could fit into the Hurricane system, I think Ty Smith will be that guy. So I think right now your best bets are Brendan Lemieux as your 13th forward and Ty Smith, who's your 7th defenseman. And then I think Tyson Jost is your 3rd extra, your extra center that you can bring in as well. That's someone that you can use in case just to help out on the center depth as well, in case someone gets hurt or someone needs a night off. I know Jack Roslovic can play, center as well, and he's the right shot that they kind of needed as well. So who really knows? But I think Tyson Jost is kind of like your extra center if need be. If not, maybe you could put Spencer Martin as your extra player, and he's your 3rd goaltender, but I don't see why the Hurricanes would roll with 3 goalies. So that's kind of what you're looking at in terms of your roster. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if on the YouTube side of things. Let me know what you think of those rosters. How the roster looks out in those lines. I know the money might not seem like it's going to work out because you're asking will arbitration give Martin Necas only like a $500,000 bump? Is Seth Jarvis's number too low? It's trying to figure out what works and what's going to help the team, what keeps them in cap compliance, and kind of felt they really have 3 roster spots left over in terms of the starters. You got your 1st and 2nd right wing spots, and essentially your 4th center. And that's kind of what you're looking at right now. So if you bring back Jarvis, Necas, and Jack Drury, there's your forward core. You're locked up. You already got your extras. You're right around $1.55 million left in your cap space. So I don't know. It'd be very interesting to see how that works out. But that is the way too early 2024-25 roster for the Hurricanes. Let me know what you think in the comments below about the money, and do you think those guys are coming back at all. But that will wrap up a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope everyone enjoyed the show. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. You can check out the podcast at @LO_Hurricanes. If you click the link in my bio, you can click and check out all of my articles over at the Hockey Writers in terms of newsletters, Carolina Hurricanes, and future Chicago Wolves content as well. I'm really excited to be doing Chicago Wolves stuff for the upcoming season with my weekly column called Wolves Weekly, so make sure you go check that out once we get closer to the fall times. I dropped one over the weekend just to give you a preview of what it looked like, so make sure you go check that out. Check out my other podcast, The Searchcast. You can find the link to watch and listen to that show as well. And with this podcast, make sure to click the link to watch it or listen to it on all podcast platforms. Leave a 5-star rating and review, because if you do, I might just read on the show. If you're on the YouTube side of things, make sure to hit subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up button. Let me know if you like the show as well. And like I said in the comments, let me know what you think about the way too early rosters and what you think of the Hurricanes bringing back Ryan and Badinka. And of course, signing Badinka to his ELC and all that good stuff. Make sure to share the podcast as well, so this we can keep growing this show on the YouTube side of things and also on the podcast. We are over 910 subscribers. We are on the road to 1,000. If we get to 1,000, I might just do something special for you guys. But like I said, I hope everyone enjoyed the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. I hope everyone enjoys their Monday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.